Okay, here with Tina House, award-winning director, producer, video journalist at APTN and talent agent. Tina, thanks for being on the show today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Now, we were just talking as we were starting to get ready and everything, and it's been quite a summer here. The heat wave, I think, was pretty incredible. How did you manage through the heat wave this past summer?
Well, thank goodness I have an AC and many fans, and I get the morning sun, so it doesn't really heat up in my place till the evening. But yeah, I managed so far. And of course, the beach is right there, so head down to the beach and find a nice shady spot.
Well, that's the great part. Vancouver is such a beautiful place, and, it's when we met, a number of years ago with my daughter, as we were she was young and you're getting into the industry, or you're actually in the industry already as a award-winning producer and such. When you think about it, like, how did you get into the film industry itself?
Well, my story is sort of unique. I moved to Vancouver. Well, I was born here, first of all, but I moved back when I was about 19. And then I started to work at this bar downtown and near Gastown, and right on the border of the downtown east side in Gastown. And I was working a day shift there one day, and there was just really nothing going on. I think I had like maybe two customers out in the bar, and I was quite bored. And I actually hated that job because I wanted to do something different, but I just didn't know what to do. There was an elder sitting at the bar having a beer, and all of a sudden we just started to talk. And he, after about 5 minutes of talking to me, he says, he goes, "You're a really smart girl." He goes, "You don't belong in this place. What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'd like to have my own clothing company, a hemp clothing company, because my brother got me interested in hemp clothes and hemp products." And so we talked a bit about that. He said, "Well, I'm very interested in what you're doing, so why don't you come down tomorrow and show me what you have for your catalogs and your samples, and I'd be interested in seeing what you have." So I said, "Okay, well, why not? I've got the day off." So I went down the next day, and I'd never met anybody like eyes like his. His eyes literally glittered, danced, and glowed, like they just sparkled, and you
Wow.
could tell he had quite a life. And he was about 75 years old at the time when I met him. His name is Alex McCallum. And so I went down to see Alex McCallum the next day, and I started to show him, my catalog and the hemp rope and hemp cloth and stuff. And he didn't really look at any of that stuff. He said, "How much money is this going to cost you to get your business going?" And I was like, "Money? Haven't even thought about money." And he says to me, "My grandmother taught me something a long time ago." And he said, "When you give, it always comes back to you." And he wrote out a check for me for $1,000.
Wow.
And I was like, "Okay, thank you, but no thank you. I'm not interested in whatever, you're thinking for payback. I'm just, no thanks." He said, "No, no, dear, no monkey business." He goes, "I want you to take this money, invest it into your company. When you make some money, pay me back." And I was like, "Okay." And then he said, "And return this favor for somebody else when you're my age." And I was literally speechless. I didn't know what to say, because at that time, you're not taught to be an entrepreneur. You're not taught that you can actually make money on your own. You don't need a job, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 job. So I took the check. I didn't cash it right away. A couple days after this, I ended up getting fired from the bar job, which was a good thing because I probably never would have quit. And I just hated that job. It was just a, terrible neighborhood, and I saw a lot of crazy stuff. And so I took this money, invested it into the hemp clothing company. I started to get the products after about a month. It took time for it to come up from the United States. And then I would go visit Grandpa Alex, and I'd go visit him and have a cup of tea with him and pay him back, a couple $100 at a time. And we'd sit and talk. And all of a sudden he started to tell me about his life and his career. Well, I find out that Alex McCallum was the very first talent agent in Vancouver.
Wow.
And he represented so many different people, and he talked about all these amazing projects he worked on, like all these Walt Disney movies and big Hollywood blockbuster movies. And he was really the fire starter that got the industry going here in Vancouver. He would travel down to Los Angeles to the studios and bring them tourism brochures of Vancouver and BC and say, "Look, you got to come up here and shoot your project, because look how beautiful it is. It could be anywhere in the world." So he inspired me. I thought, if there's somebody I can just sit across from right now and have a cup of tea, and somebody that actually did it, I can do it too. And so Alex also was the talent agent for Kim Cattrall from Sex and the City,
Right.
which was pretty cool. So he had a very successful career. So I went home and I thought, okay, I could be a movie extra. My friend is doing extra work. I'm going to get hold of his agent. And that's how I started. I became a movie extra with my roommate. We think we did that for what, 6 months, and I got kind of bored of sitting in the crowd, really not doing much. But I paid attention to the people behind the scenes, the cast, the producers, the director. I was very keen on doing something different. I didn't know what it was at the time. I thought, am I going to be an actress? I don't know, maybe. So I phoned up an acting studio and I said, is there anything out there for Indigenous people? And they said, well, there's a agency that represents First Nations talent, Indigenous people. And I said, oh, perfect. What's their name and number? So get a hold of them, phone them up, and the guy answers. And I said, hello, I'm Tina House. I want to come meet the owner of the company. And so anyway, the guy says, okay, hold on a sec, put me on hold. Comes back. He says, are you related to Dakota House? And of course, my cousin being TV Tanya from North of 60. And I said, yes, Dakota's my cousin. So again, put me on hold, coming back. Okay, the owner will meet you tomorrow, 1 o'clock. I said, okay. So the next day I got this meeting. The owner of the agency sits across from me at her desk and tells me what she does at the agency. And after about 5 minutes, she looks at me and she says, now, what do you want to do? And I looked her right in the eye and I said, I want to do your job. And she said,
Yeah.
she said, you want to be an agent? And I said, yes. So she said, well, do you have any office experience? And I says, no, but I'm very, quick at learning and I can pick up things. I'm really good with people and so forth. So she said, okay, well, thanks for coming down. Nice to meet you. And I was like, oh, thanks for having me. Thanks a lot. See you later. And within the hour, she phoned me at home and she said, Tina, she goes, I was so impressed with your approach that I want to hire you for the summer as our summer admin assistant. It's just a summer position. Would you be interested in showing up on Monday? And I'm like, yes, see you Monday. So now I'm working at a talent agency. So I have, a
all from that moment,
yes,
right? Yeah.
yes.
And it's to even recognize it though is amazing because a lot of moments in people's lives, they do happen and they're there, but that you just made the most out of that. And then you started to move along. But I love I want to do your job. That's awesome.
Yes. Well, I had a lot of confidence.
That's the key. It really is.
It is, absolutely, yes. So yeah, I just went from there. Within a couple of days, I was managing the filing cabinet with our headshots and resumes, and I'd remember everybody's name and photo and all their information on their resumes. And also back in the day, we had fax machines. I don't know if any of the listeners remember what those things were, but the fax machine would ring constantly with breakdowns from feature films, TV shows, movies of the week, commercials from here to Los Angeles to New York to Toronto. I mean, back in those days, Vancouver was Hollywood North. We had so many productions here. It was just crazy. And
yeah, what were some of the production at the time? Because we're talking like late 90s ish, mid to late 90s. Were we talking?
Yeah, late 90s, like X-Files, like Millennium, like there was the Twilight Zone. Like we had so many different series that were shot here, but I think X-Files would be probably the bigger one back in those days.
Yeah, and I think even before that, they had like 21 Jump Street. That was, I remember in high school, that's the 80s, but they had that as well. But it was really going off. You could see movie trucks all over the place and such, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the industry has grown. Back in those days, like I said, it was absolutely on fire. So I went from there to then running the kids division within 2 weeks, and then by the end of the summer, I took over the agency and ran the whole thing. I was only 19 years old, and my boss was sick for a couple months. So I was by myself. I had back in those days, I don't know if your viewers remember what pagers were, but I had a pager.
Tell everybody what that is. There's two parts. Like the fax is like a really bad photocopy that would, come through the telephone line, basically, right? A little machine. And a pager. Let's tell everybody what a pager is for sure.
Oh, the pager was like the cool kids only had pagers. I mean, it's like this little square little box thing that you could clip onto your belt and it would go beep, 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 beep. And then you'd see like the number and you'd say, call this number or whatever. So
And I used to carry around quarters because, there was actually phone booths and stuff like that for a while where you can make phone calls, and now they don't exist anymore. But those pages, it was the beeper and 911, all the little texts and stuff like that. Basically, you give yourself, but creative time. So sorry, go on there, Tina.
Well, I actually have a funny story about the phone booth and the pager. I'll get to that in a second. So I ended up working at that agency, got to know all the casting directors and extras casting directors because I had extras going to work during the day. I had people going out for auditions. And that's when I met you and your beautiful daughter, who's now grown up now. But back then, she was just such a little sweetheart. And I remember meeting you guys at the beach and doing some headshots. And
Yes.
so I started my own company, House of Talent, when I was about 21. And it just went from there. So when I started my company, of course, I was just starting and not a lot of money coming in, but I had a hope and a dream and faith in myself. And I had a roommate who ran up our phone bill, so our phone gets cut off. So I ran my agency with the payphone at the store down the street and my pager. So I had quarters. I had a lot of quarters.
Yeah, that's living life back then.
Absolutely. I think the owner of the store would just shake her head when she'd see me come with my roll of quarters and all my million calls that I had to make.
And they had phone books back then too. Like that it was like yellow pages and stuff, super thick. My kids and stuff wouldn't even know what those were now. It would be like foreign to them, just like that, or the first computer or something like that. It'd be like, what is that, Dad?
Absolutely.
So it was around that time that the talent agent, and we definitely you stood out in my mind because I got to meet you, and just hearing your story to me was so inspiring. I mean, not just inspiring, but you were confident, but you also believed in yourself, and I think that's a big part for anybody to take from anything they do in life is to have belief in yourself. And I think it's incredible how that moment in the bar has started to lead to many of these other things in life.
Absolutely. And I was born with it. I represent a very proud legacy of leadership. My grandmother, Annie House, co-founded the first political movement in this province for the Métis and the non-status Indians. It was called BCANSI, the BC Association of Non-Status Indians. And then my late father took over as president for 30 years. So I grew up watching my dad on television and fighting for the rights for my people. And their legacy lives on within me. So for sure, that's where I get it from.
Absolutely. And so, the journey started there, and as it started to move along, I think, we've had the chance to connect on many different things, from music to you name it, like just being around each other. The Olympics, we had a chance, to work together on those, and, some of the stuff I did with Nike and all those types of stuff. But what have you been up to lately?
Well, since I started my talent agent career, then I got into like production and so forth. But for the last 18 years, I am the video journalist at APTN National News BC Bureau. I am self-taught, so it took a while for me, I think, to get my groove here. But after 18 years, I absolutely love what I get to do here. I get to interview cool people like yourself, musicians, political heroes, elders, people doing inspiring things, and also some really tough stories that we have to deal with. So that's what I've been up to. My job has taken me now all over the world. I was very blessed to go along with a delegation to Rome, Italy, to the Vatican when the Pope apologized for the residential schools a couple years back. And funny enough, have you seen the movie Bones of Crows?
Yes.
So did you see my cameo in there?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm in the film, and they used actual footage of me reporting from the Vatican in the film.
Right. That's right. So it's actual footage.
Yeah. So it's actual footage of me at the Vatican. And then the interviews with the residential school survivors at the end of the film, those are all my interviews that I conducted.
That's amazing. And there must have been a number of them just to be able to kind of move through that. And how was it being there, in in that place, in the area around the Vatican and those types of things, but also the survivors who, are true inspiration to us, but of truly surviving, but also keeping our culture going, and that's so important for us and our kids and our muntmunt that are coming up. But just to be in that moment with those survivors, I've always thought, just the presence that they have and the strength that they have, comes off of them. But how was it and how many did you interview while you're over there?
Well, there was quite a few, and leading up to going to the Vatican, I think it really kicked off for me and many others when the 215 were discovered in Kamloops a couple years earlier. And I was, I was actually on vacation when that happened, and they contacted me and said, "You need to be in Kamloops tomorrow." And I'm like, "Well, I'm on vacation." They said, "No, you need to be in Kamloops tomorrow." So I said, "Okay, I'm going to take myself off vacation and I'm going to get to work." So I drove to Kamloops the next day, and that's when it was revealed of that discovery there. And that's when it started for me, was hearing those stories and having that opportunity. I was the only journalist, like there is journalists from all around the world that descended on Kamloops when this happened. And I was the only journalist there that was given permission to walk within that old school. I did it with a survivor as well, Rose Miller. And bless her, she's such a beautiful, strong, powerful lady. And it was like when she would talk about being a little girl at that school, you could look in her eyes, and although she's near 80 years old now, you could look in her eyes and almost see that little girl again. Like their little girl was still trapped. Those memories were still so vivid for her. And every step we took, she'd stop and say, "Oh, I remember this happened," or "I remember standing at this window and crying and waiting for my dad to come." And she actually ran away from that school and wrote a letter to her dad to tell him to come and get her. And she didn't know where to go because many of those kids were brought by milk truck and driven in the back roads up, through the back way, up mountains, down the alleys. I mean, literally trying to confuse the kids of where they came from. They made it seem like it was so far away, this journey, but yet many of their communities were just really close by and they didn't realize that. So she ran along the river. She got as far as the Red Bridge in Kamloops, and she was caught and she was brought back, and she was severely punished over this running away. And she never did get to send that letter to her dad. So I think that, just talking with her and hearing these stories, I mean, this little girl was trying to survive, and she did survive, and the memories that she carries now, the world needs to hear it. The world needs to know the truth of what happened. And I'm just so blessed and so grateful and incredibly humbled and honored that they've given me that gift of sharing their voices. So it really has affected me deeply, and I really honor all the families, all the survivors, and the intergenerational survivors as well, because it has continued on through the generations, as you know.
Absolutely. And I know working in my community, I remember elders, this is probably late 90s, early 2000s. They met with us, and I was on council at the time, and they said, "Make sure, can you video things for us?" And so, thank you for being not only the video journalist, but you're capturing those stories in our oral traditions and how it gets passed down orally from one generation to the next. Those stories are so important because that's how our children are going to learn, and the children's children as they start to move forward. So I think it's great that you're able to do that, be there, but also capture those important, really, teachings too. It's the story of their survival, but also the teachings that they have so that we can learn from that and pass that on to our children. So are there other stories also that kind of stand out over the past, 15 or 18 years for you that were really important? I think you've covered so many, cut such a breadth of different stories, but there are many of them. And I think, people really I don't think really believed the things, when it came to residential school. But when you hear it from the mouths of those that survived, are so important. But there's other stories I'm sure that you must have covered as well that are so critical to not only our survival, but who we are as Indigenous people.
Absolutely. Well, firstly, the MMIWG. I mean, my first real big story here at APTN was covering the trial for the late serial killer Robert Pickton. And that was like, I literally drove home from the courthouse every night in tears, just hearing the stories of the families and the anguish and the frustration and just the sadness. And once again, the families really embraced me being an Indigenous woman and allowed me in the inner circle of taking part of the ceremonies and so forth that they were doing there. But I did a story in 2009. And back then we were we just had launched a new show called APTN Investigates. And they were looking for new ideas for the show. So I pitched doing a story on a murdered or a missing woman. The missing woman happened to be my own cousin. And I told the producer, I said, I can get you inside track, perspective from a family that's actually looking for their lost loved one right now. And it happens to be my own family. So he pitched it to his team and they came back and said, well, we can't give you the whole half hour, but we trust you. We believe in you. We know you can do this. We know you can be professional. And they said, we'll give you the first 9 minutes of the half hour show. So I said, okay, I'll take it. I flew to Grand Prairie, Alberta. Right away, I started to talk to my friends before I left about what I envisioned about happening. And I just felt like I needed to connect a Cree elder to come and to do a ceremony, because it was during this time that we were planning on heading up there. They unfortunately did find the body of my cousin, Elisa Zatelny, in Grand Prairie. She was in a park. And so I organized for a Cree elder to come and do a ceremony at that park with my cousin Lana. And it was so powerful. It was so powerful. She did this ceremony in Cree, and she also sang Amazing Grace in Cree. And that song was so incredibly beautiful. But we did that ceremony there in that park, and the wind came and it started to rain lightly, and all of a sudden a rainbow, and the sun was right behind it. It was such a beautiful moment. And you literally felt her spirit go,
Yeah.
She wasn't trapped there. So I did this story on that perspective. I don't reveal until the very end of the story that she's my own cousin when I do a stand-up at the very end.
Right.
And I sent it to Winnipeg, and they said, you know what? We're going to cancel the other guy. You got the whole half hour. You've got 2 weeks to finish it. Let's go. I said, all right, let's do it. So at that time, there was officially, I think, about 520 women that the government had recognized as being either murdered or missing. So I wanted to show the viewers what that looked like. I didn't know if that was like a wall with photos of 520 or what it meant. But when I was talking to Paul Barnsley about it, our executive producer, he said, I'd like to see 520 people so people know how many people that is. So I was like, okay, that's it. I went on Facebook, organized an event. We met down at Crab Park where they have the Memorial Rock.
Yep.
The call out went out. Everybody came bringing candles, wearing black. And I'll never forget that moment. There we are, assembled around the rock, and about 15 elders on one side with drums and 15 elders on the other side with drums, all powerful matriarch women, powerful, powerful women. And I'm standing there filming this, and they're drumming and singing for the victims. And it was like, I'll never forget that moment for the rest of my life. It was so powerful and incredible. Then we marched over to Main and Hastings, shut down traffic, which I didn't plan. The group just planned it. And I remember this one shot where this girl standing with a drumstick in her hand, and she holds it up in the air and she yells, "These women matter!" And the whole crowd just went crazy. And it was amazing. I probably had about a couple thousand people there, and I organized this within 2 days.
Wow.
The movement was just so strong. So in 2010, I ended up winning the Amnesty International Human Rights Journalism Award for that episode that I did called Missing Women. So if you viewers want to check it out, go to our archives on aptn.ca and look up Missing Women. I think it was like season 1 or season 2.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. The strength of the story, but also murdered and missing women for so long. It was one of those things that wasn't really acknowledged, and it not even wasn't really, it just wasn't acknowledged. And, when you keep statistics on other things that happen to women, there really there wasn't the numbers in terms of like keeping track of murdered and missing Indigenous women, because it does happen. And many of our families have all been connected one way or another to murdered and missing women. It's affected our families all across the country in such a big way. So being able to tell that story, and I hope everybody does check that out. Go to APTN for that, the website, and look at that. And were there some other stories also that kind of stand out to you in terms of, and also winning awards? I mean, you won a number of awards in terms of, not just in 2010, but in 2022 and just most recently in awards as well. But I think for you, I think your story is so incredible. But what are some of the stories that have covered also that have stood out to you?
Well, I absolutely love talking with people. I love profiling musicians. I love meeting really inspiring people like yourself. I've interviewed you a number of times over the years, and some really cool people I've met along the way. I just had the opportunity to sit down with a cool cat named Stevie Salas.
Oh, yes.
Stevie's doing a number of things. He's a rock star. I mean, he's pretty awesome. He's connected to everybody. I mean, he's played with the Rolling Stones and Mick Jagger and Rod Stewart and so
George Clinton too. I mean,
yes.
Yeah, it's amazing. And he's the one that produced and I don't produce and directed, but Indians That Rock the World.
That's right. Rumble, the Indians Who Rock the World. That's right. So he features a lot of really cool Indigenous people that, have made a huge influence in music. So, yeah, so that was super cool. But I've interviewed so many different people over the years. It's like a blur. I mean, my day is like crazy because so I start at 8, sometimes there's a press conference at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then I have to get back to my studio, write it, voice it, edit it, and then have it go to a national broadcast by 3 p.m. every single day.
Wow.
Yeah, so the deadline is really tight, but after all these years now, it's like clockwork for me. It's I won't say it's easy, but it is a lot easier for me now because I've been doing it for so long. But yeah, I really do enjoy filming inspiring people. I just love that our community is so vibrant, that there's so many cool things happening, so many people that are really making a big difference in the world, and yeah, it's been a great time. The last couple of years, yes, with getting the recognition, I'm so incredibly honored for those. In 2022, I received the Canadian Screen Award for Best National Reporter, and I'm the first Indigenous journalist to ever win that.
It's huge, absolutely.
So, yeah, and I was just happy just to be nominated. I didn't think I'd win. I mean, here I am beating out Omer Satadina and Mercedes Stevenson and Ellen Morrow from CBC, and I was like, man, I just feel so grateful and thankful for all the love and support I've had over the years from so many people that have propelled me forward, and it's been a good ride for sure.
Oh, definitely. And I think I follow you on social media. I've seen you at work. I mean, you've always been so accommodating to, my son wants to learn about the, journalism, and you'll show him the tricks of the trade, or, kind of bring him in just to have that kind of mentoring opportunity. And it does go back to, that conversation you had, when you started. If you're passing it along, it does have an impact on people, and you never know when that's going to happen. So why don't we do a little thing here where, because you've interviewed so many people, why don't I just list out some of the kind of maybe the areas, music to entertainment to movies and stuff, and maybe you can come back at me with some of the people that you've interviewed, whether they're Indigenous or non-Indigenous. I think that's the thing. Our Indigenous peoples are out doing incredible things as well. So why don't I just start it first? Okay, let's go back to music. Who stands out? One or two people?
Well, there's so many. I mean, like I said, when I think back to who I've talked to, I mean, it's like a blur, but I've had the cool opportunity to interview Taboo from the Black Eyed Peas.
Oh, yeah.
Really awesome guy, super nice, super talented, just really charismatic, just really amazing. And then, we've had others like Murray Porter. I mean, he's my buddy. He literally just lives in the tower above my office, and I can call on Murray anytime to come on down with his piano and play. And he's a Juno Award-winning musician. I mean, he's an amazing, music hero himself. And George Leach, I actually got George started. I discovered George Leach back in the day. I was at a youth conference in Lillooet, and I used to be a public speaker. I used to travel all over the country and teach workshops to people on how to get involved in film and TV. And I walk in one day from outside and I come into the gym and there's this guy playing this, slide dobro guitar with 10 little kids sitting on the floor in front of him. And I'm like, whoa, who's this guy? So I check him out and I'm like, this guy's so good. He's so talented. So when he was finished, I said, can I interview you, in a separate room where there was supposed to be a workshop, but there wasn't. So he sat on a desk and just started to play for me. And I had my camera with me and I wasn't with APTN. I was doing my own production at that time. And I started to film him. And I came back and I was telling my friends here in the city, I'm like, hey, I met this kid. He's like really, really talented. So good. And within 2 days, I booked him at the Commodore to open up for the Powder Blues. So going from, playing in front of 10 little kids to playing at the Commodore with his name on a dress.
Yeah, amazing.
A big step up. So then I started to shoot my documentary called Inspiration, and it features George Leach.
Okay.
So then I booked him with my friend here in the city to start recording his first album, which was only 2 blocks from my house. So I'd go interview him all the time while he was recording his album. And we went on tour with that little project. We screened at the American Indian Film Festival, Palm Springs, Montreal, in Vancouver, all over the place. And then George would also perform as well. So we go way back, and it's really nice to see his success too. And he's also a Juno Award winner now. And so, yeah, it's really cool. But
Absolutely.
yeah, there's so many people that I can, think back and think,
well, what about the movie industry? You're in the industry, directing, producing, those kinds of things, but other people that people maybe not know, or maybe you want people to know about in the movie industry.
Well, I had a really cool opportunity when I was covering Standing Rock down in North Dakota with that whole movement of Standing Rock. And so I flew down there for about a week to cover what was happening there. And one of the people that I got to interview down there was Riley Keough, which was Elvis's granddaughter, which is Marie Presley's daughter. And so she came down and I did an exclusive interview with her down there. And that was like so cool because my dad's like the ultimate Elvis fan. And for me to be friends now with Riley Keough, I mean, it was super amazing. And what a lovely girl, just so amazing and really nice and just really cared about the people. And so she actually spends a lot of time down there on the Pine Ridge Reservation with the people. And so she's very dedicated to, in helping with mentor the next generation as well. And so that was pretty cool. Man, just thinking back, I mean, there's so many different people that I've met. I mean, now it's super cool. I wanted to tell you about is that I just got voted onto the board of directors for the Vancouver International Film Festival.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's big. It's a great festival.
Yes, I'm so excited. So I'll be interviewing a lot more rock stars and movie stars very, very soon.
Absolutely. And also, Tantu Cardinal's been doing a lot of work for over the years. She's amazing. But I know Tantu's a friend of yours as well. But just to see the work she's doing and the recognition she's receiving is incredible too. I think that's awesome. What about in the sports area? Any interviews stand out with you in terms of the sports area? Different teams, people, those kinds of things?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think thanks to you for helping me that time get into that rugby sevens match. And interviewing the All Blacks, that was super cool.
Oh, yeah.
Super cool. And also to interview, Team Canada's captain, who was Indigenous himself. But just to be there on the field with guys like that, I mean, of course, BC Lions, when they won the Grey Cup here, I got to interview J.R. LaRose, did a story with him. And just to feel that energy of the crowd and to be on the field, I mean, it is super cool for sure.
Incredible. Well, there's been, such a journey for you, but also it's great you're always out and always positive. I think that's another thing that people can kind of take from your story, even personally, is that you're always positive. about things, even as difficult as it can be. It's to find the positive in it. And if it's a negative thing, how do we turn it positive so people can learn and be educated? And that's a big part of the storytelling that you do so much and so often, whether it's movies or interviews in terms of APTN. So I know that, there's so many young people. We have a young population, Indigenous population across the country. But how do people get into the film industry? Is there any advice and tips that you can give folks?
Yeah, absolutely. It just depends on, what it is that you want to do. But, a lot of times what I say to people is it's not what you know, but who you know. So just schmooze, meet as many people as you possibly can, ask as many questions as you can. If it's acting, I would highly recommend going to training for that. I mean, it's a very competitive business. You want the best headshots. You don't want to sign up with those fly-by-night companies that say, oh, we're going to, get you in front of casting agents for $5,000 or whatever it is. Meet us at the mall and we're going to do this big casting session. That's not how to do it. Every single province in this country has a film commission. So you want to go on to your local film commission website. Just Google whatever that is, wherever you may be. Here in BC, it's now called Creative BC. I think it's changed over the years. But there's also unions in every province as well. And on there are listings of what's shooting. So it'll be like the film list, we call it. So it'll tell you what's shooting, what are the dates for that production, who's doing extras casting, who's doing casting. So that's one thing you should keep an eye on for that. The next thing is to get a credible agent. So to go on to those union websites or the film commission websites and find a list of credible agents to sign up with. That's the other thing. If it's production you want to get into, again, training is essential. I kind of just, created my own way of doing things and self-taught, but I had a lot of people that inspired me that I would mentor with all the time and pay attention to, their style of work. And it's as simple as everybody has a phone camera these days. I mean, you can literally start practicing your shooting right now if that's something you want to get into. You can literally edit on your cell phone too. There's apps you can download that are free. I mean, the power really is in your hands if you want to take it. And what I always say to people is that there's no mistaking why you meet people at a certain time in your life. It is meant to be, and it's meant to be for a certain reason. So either it's, you learn something from them or you learn what to do or what not to do, so I think it's good either way.
Well, thank you very much, Tina. And I look forward to seeing you not only around Vancouver, but at some of the venues or some of the gigs that we're both at sometimes, or we're going to be rocking out sometimes. So I'll always let you know when we're rocking out as well with Bitterly Divine. But I think the most important thing is thanks for carrying on the teachings. Thanks for being the storyteller of the time of today. That's so important to pass on to our future generations. Tina House, thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you, 20.
You too.